Asterisk, asterisk, a family, I need you to hear me tonight, because somebody came in here thinking that God's just not moving for them. You've been praying, crying, waiting, but can I tell you a truth that might shake you a little? God's not waiting to show up. He's already there. The question is, could it be that God is waiting on you? See, negative feelings, fear, shame, doubt, they don't just whisper, they chain us down. They make us think we're stuck, unworthy, not ready. But the God who created you has already placed greatness inside of you. And tonight, we're about to break every negative thought, every lie, and every chain that's been holding you back from walking in the life God designed for you. This isn't just another message. This is a call to rise, to move, to step into the freedom that's already yours. Somebody say, I'm ready to move. Family, listen closely, because this right here might be the shift you've been praying for. So many of us spend our lives waiting. We're waiting for the right moment, the perfect sign, the breakthrough that we believe is somewhere out there in the distance. We say things like, when God moves, then I'll move. When He opens the door, then I'll step through. When He delivers me from these feelings, then I'll walk in my purpose. But what if I told you that's not how it works? What if I told you that the very thing you've been asking God to do, He's been waiting on you to take the first step? See, the enemy doesn't have to destroy your destiny to keep you stuck. He only has to convince you to wait long enough for it to pass you by. Negative feelings creep in, and suddenly we think it's safer to sit still than to stand up and move. We tell ourselves, I'll start healing when I feel stronger, or I'll launch that dream when I feel confident, or I'll forgive when the pain doesn't hurt anymore. But that's not faith. That's fear dressed up as wisdom. Faith is moving even when you don't feel ready. Faith is walking when the ground hasn't fully formed under your feet yet. You see, God has already positioned you for victory. He's already placed the tools you need inside you. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is alive in you right now. But if you never stand up and start walking, you'll never discover the strength that's already there. Too many of us are waiting for clarity before we act, but clarity often comes in motion. You can't steer a parked car. If you want direction, you've got to start driving, even if you're not sure where the next turn is yet. I know what it feels like to think you're stuck. I know what it's like to feel like you're at the end of your rope, praying for God to move mountains, and sometimes He will. But sometimes He's waiting for you to pick up your feet and climb that mountain one step at a time. Think about the children of Israel standing at the edge of the Red Sea. The waters didn't part while they were standing still. It wasn't until Moses lifted that staff and the people started moving forward that the miracle happened. Could it be that the miracle you've been waiting on is waiting for you to take a step? The longer you wait for perfect conditions, the more your negative feelings take root. Fear grows stronger the longer it goes unchallenged. Doubt gets louder the longer you give it space to speak. Waiting feels safe, but it actually feeds the very thing that's holding you back. You're not protecting yourself by standing still. You're prolonging your pain. Every day you wait to step into what God called you to do, you reinforce the lie that you're not enough. And the longer you believe that lie, the harder it is to hear God's truth. Here's what I've learned. Moving forward doesn't mean you're fearless. It means you refuse to let fear dictate your future. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that God's promise is bigger than your worry. There will never be a moment where you suddenly wake up with zero negative feelings, zero doubts, zero struggles. Growth doesn't happen like that. Transformation happens while you're walking. Healing happens while you're stepping forward. Confidence is built while you're moving in obedience to what God already told you. Some of us are praying for God to open doors, but we're still sitting on the couch. We're asking for Him to guide us, but we're not even in the hallway yet. If you believe God placed a calling on your life, if you believe He put that dream in your heart, why are you still standing in the same spot? God gave you legs for a reason. He gave you a mind that can imagine more than your circumstances. He gave you a spirit that can rise even when everything around you says stay down, but none of that power will activate while you're frozen in fear. There's a story about a man who prayed every day for years, asking God to let him win the lottery. Every morning he'd cry out, "Lord, please bless me with the jackpot." One day, frustrated, he shouted at heaven, "God, why won't you let me win?" and a voice came back saying, "Son, meet me halfway, buy a ticket." That's how many of us live. We're waiting for blessings without ever moving toward them. We're asking for change while refusing to change. We're begging for doors to open but never taking a step toward them, and I get it. It's scary. It's scary to walk into the unknown, to risk failing, to face criticism, to admit you're starting from nothing. But listen to me. Staying where you are is costing you more than failure ever could. Staying in one place robs you of seeing what God can do through you. Every step you take toward your calling is a declaration that you trust God more than you trust your fear. That's the kind of faith that moves heaven. That's the kind of movement that causes chains to break and miracles to unfold. You might say, "But I don't know the plan yet. I don't know where to start." Here's the truth. You don't need the whole plan to start walking. You just need the next step. God rarely gives us the entire map up front because he's not looking for planners, he's looking for followers. And following requires movement. Abraham didn't know where God was sending him when he left his homeland. Peter didn't have a detailed itinerary when he stepped out of the boat to walk on water. They moved first, and the revelation came later. And as you start walking, something incredible happens. You begin to see yourself differently. The more steps you take, the less those negative feelings control you. Fear loses its grip with every action you take in faith. Doubt fades when you see God showing up in unexpected ways. Every small move forward builds momentum until one day you look back and realize you're not the same person who felt stuck. You've grown, you've stretched. You've become the version of yourself God always saw, even when you didn't believe it. This is the shift. Stop asking God to do what he's already empowered you to do. Stop waiting for a rescue when he's given you the strength to rise. Stop expecting a move of God while you're standing still. God is saying, "I've already placed victory inside you. I'm not withholding it from you. I'm waiting for you to step into it." Your mind is the command center of your entire life. Every decision you make, every action you take, every emotion you feel, it all begins with a thought. And if those thoughts are misaligned with what God says about you, you'll find yourself trapped in a cycle of negative feelings, unable to fully step into the destiny that's been designed for you. What you think about, you bring about. Your life will always move in the direction of your dominant thoughts. If you constantly entertain thoughts of fear, defeat, and unworthiness, no matter how many opportunities God places in front of you, you won't see them because your mind is not aligned to recognize them. We've been taught to focus on changing our circumstances, but few of us have been taught that the real battle is won or lost in the mind. Negative feelings don't just appear out of thin air. They're born from the thoughts you repeatedly allow to take root. Think about it. If you tell yourself every day, "I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, I can't do this," those thoughts create feelings of fear, shame, and hopelessness, and those feelings begin to control how you show up in the world. You stop trying, you pull back, you doubt everything God whispers to your spirit. Before long, you've built a mental prison where freedom should be, but here's what I want you to understand. Your mind is not the enemy, it's a tool. And just like any tool, it can either build your future or destroy it depending on how you use it. The Bible says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That means change doesn't start with a miracle dropping out of the sky. It starts with you making a conscious decision to take authority over your thoughts. It means refusing to let every negative, toxic thought roam freely in your head. It means deliberately choosing to think higher, to think in alignment with God's truth rather than your temporary feelings. Most of us underestimate just how powerful a single thought can be. A single negative thought, if nurtured, can snowball into a belief. And beliefs shape behavior. You might start with a thought like, "I'm not talented enough." If you keep repeating that thought, it turns into a belief, "People like me don't succeed." That belief then dictates your actions. You stop applying for opportunities, you stop speaking up, you stop dreaming big. Before you know it, your entire life is operating under a false belief that started as a single unchecked thought. But the opposite is also true. A single positive, faith-filled thought can set you on a completely different trajectory. If you start telling yourself, I am equipped because God equips the called, and you repeat that thought, it becomes a belief. With God's help, I can rise above anything. That belief inspires actions. You start stepping out, taking risks, building confidence. Over time, your whole life begins to reflect that one thought you decided to believe. That's why aligning your thoughts is so critical. It's not just mindset, it's life direction. Here's the challenge. Most of us have been living in mental autopilot for so long that we don't even notice how negative our thinking has become. We've allowed the opinions of others, past failures, and societal pressures to program our minds to expect the worst. And as long as that programming runs unchallenged, we'll continue to see negative results and wonder why God isn't showing up. But God cannot build a life of victory on a foundation of defeated thinking. He needs you to partner with Him by bringing your thoughts into alignment with His Word. So how do you begin to do that? First, you have to become aware of your mental patterns. Pay attention to the inner dialogue that runs through your mind every day. What do you say to yourself when you wake up, when you make a mistake, when you dream about your future? If the majority of your thoughts are filled with self, doubt, fear, and limitations, then you've discovered the root of why those negative feelings keep resurfacing. Awareness is the first step because you cannot change what you do not confront. Once you're aware, the second step is to challenge every thought that doesn't align with God's truth. When a thought says you're not strong enough, you counter it with, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. When a thought says you're alone, you remind yourself, God will never leave me nor forsake me. This isn't just positive thinking, it's spiritual warfare. You are literally reprogramming your mind to operate in faith instead of fear. Third, you must intentionally plant new, empowering thoughts. Just like a garden, your mind needs seeds of truth sown daily. That means reading scripture, listening to messages that build your faith, surrounding yourself with people who speak life into you. Every positive thought is a seed, and with time and repetition, those seeds grow into beliefs that empower you to take bold action. Don't expect it to happen overnight. Renewing your mind is a process. But every day you choose to think higher is a day you weaken the grip of negative feelings. And here's something many people miss. Aligning your thoughts doesn't mean you'll never have negative feelings again. Feelings are natural, but they don't have to control you. When your thoughts are aligned with faith, you can acknowledge negative feelings without letting them dictate your actions. You can feel fear and still move forward because your mind is anchored in truth. You can feel doubt and still take steps toward your destiny because your beliefs are rooted in God's promises. This alignment also shifts how you see challenges. When your mind is misaligned, obstacles feel like proof that you're not meant to succeed. But when your thoughts are aligned, obstacles become opportunities for growth. Instead of thinking, this is too hard, you start thinking, this is preparing me for something greater. That one shift in thinking can completely transform how you experience life. Every great move of God begins with a transformed mind. Before David ever faced Goliath, he had already conquered fear in his mind. Before Esther stepped into the king's court, she had already decided in her mind that her people's freedom was worth the risk. Before Jesus performed miracles, he first renewed the minds of his followers with words of faith and power. Your mind sets the ceiling for what you can experience. If you believe you're defeated, you'll live defeated. If you believe you're chosen, equipped, and anointed, you'll start living like it. The truth is, you are already who God says you are, but you won't live it out until your mind catches up. That's why He's waiting for you to renew your thinking. He's not withholding blessings. He's waiting for you to think at the level of the blessings He's already prepared. Negative feelings can't survive in a mind that's fully aligned with truth. Once your thoughts shift, your feelings will follow and your actions will naturally flow in the direction of purpose. Every one of us carries a set of beliefs deep inside that silently shape how we live, how we love, and how much we're willing to dream. Some of these beliefs push us forward, but many of them hold us back like invisible chains. These are limiting beliefs. The quiet lies we've accepted as truth, the false ceilings we've built over our own potential. They whisper, "You can't. You're not enough. You'll never change." And because we've heard those voices for so long, we stop questioning them. We begin to live as though those chains are part of who we are, forgetting that God never placed them there. Limiting beliefs are often born from past experiences. Maybe someone you trusted spoke words that cut deep, telling you you'd never amount to anything. Maybe you tried to step out in faith before and you failed, and that failure convinced you that you should never try again. Maybe you grew up in an environment where dreaming big was mocked or survival was the only goal, and now even the thought of living abundantly feels foreign. Over time, these experiences start to carve paths in your mind, shaping your identity, telling you what you can or cannot do. They become heavy chains, keeping you tied to places you were never meant to stay. The problem is not that you've faced hardship. The problem is that those hardships taught you a story about yourself that doesn't match the story God has written. You start to believe that because you've been rejected, you're unworthy of love. Because you've made mistakes, you're disqualified from purpose. Because people left you, you must not be valuable. These beliefs sink into your soul until they feel like facts. But they are not facts. They are distortions, and every distortion can be dismantled once you shine the light of truth on it. The danger of limiting beliefs is that they don't just live in your mind, they shape your reality. If you believe you can't succeed, you stop trying, and not trying ensures you never succeed, which reinforces the belief. If you believe you're unworthy of love, you sabotage healthy relationships, and every broken connection convinces you you're unlovable. These beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies not because they're true, but because they quietly dictate every choice you make. You think you're protecting yourself from pain, but really, you're protecting the chains that keep you from freedom. Breaking these chains starts with recognition. You have to become aware of the beliefs running your life on autopilot. Begin to ask yourself questions. What do I believe about myself, about my future, about what's possible for me? When an opportunity arises, do I think I can do this? Or does my mind immediately say, I'm not good enough? When God whispers a vision into my heart, do I trust him, or do I instantly think of all the reasons it could never happen? Awareness exposes the lies that have been operating in the shadows for years, but awareness alone won't set you free. You have to challenge those beliefs with intentionality and persistence. Limiting beliefs don't break by wishing them away. They break when you confront them with truth over and over until the chains can't hold anymore. Every time a thought says, you'll always struggle, you declare, God has plans to prosper me, not to harm me. When the chain says, you're defined by your past, you answer, I am a new creation, the old has passed away. When shame says, you are broken, you speak life, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. This is not just positive self-talk, this is warfare for your identity. The enemy has no real power to strip you of your God-given potential, so he works through deception. He tries to convince you that you are less than what God made you to be. Breaking the chains means refusing to agree with that deception any longer. It means taking back authority over your own mind and declaring that only God's truth has the right to define you. Some chains are generational. Maybe you've been carrying beliefs passed down through your family, beliefs about poverty, failure, or worthiness. Perhaps everyone around you has lived under the same limitations, so it feels normal. But normal doesn't mean divine. Just because your parents struggled doesn't mean you're destined to. Just because no one else in your family dreamed bigger doesn't mean you can't be the first. Breaking generational chains often feels heavier because you're not just fighting for yourself. You're breaking patterns that have lasted for decades. But you must remember, you are equipped for this fight. God chose you to be the chain breaker for a reason. One of the hardest truths to accept is that limiting beliefs can become comfortable. They're familiar. They've been with you for so long that you almost feel safe hiding behind them. They give you excuses not to take risks, not to put yourself out there, not to face the possibility of failure. But comfort is not the same as freedom. True freedom often feels terrifying at first because it means stepping beyond the cage you've lived in for years. It means daring to believe you can succeed, that you can be loved, that you can rise. Breaking the chains also requires forgiveness, not just of others but of yourself. Many limiting beliefs are rooted in shame from past mistakes. You think because you failed once, you're destined to fail again. Because you hurt someone or made a bad decision, you're unworthy of grace. But God has already forgiven you. It's time you accept that forgiveness for yourself. When you forgive yourself, you take away the enemy's leverage to keep you bound to your past. You open the door to healing, and healing weakens every chain that tried to convince you you'd never change. And here's something powerful. Every time you break a chain, you gain strength to break another. Freedom is not usually one big moment. It's a series of small victories. Maybe you speak up in a room where you once felt invisible. Maybe you try something new even though fear says you'll fail. Maybe you finally set a boundary with someone who's been controlling you. Each small act of courage is like striking a hammer against those chains. With every strike, the grip of those beliefs loosens until one day the chain shatters completely. The beauty of breaking limiting beliefs is that it doesn't just free you, it frees everyone connected to you. When people see you rise above what held you down, they begin to believe they can too. Your courage becomes contagious. Your testimony becomes a roadmap for someone else who's still shackled by lies. God uses your freedom to set others free, turning every broken chain into a weapon against the darkness that once held you captive. Faith is not simply believing in the unseen. It is acting as though the unseen is already reality. Too often, we confuse hope with faith. Hope is wishing for something to happen someday. Faith is moving as if it has already been done. Many of us pray and wait, expecting God to do everything while we do nothing. But that is not how transformation happens. Prayer is powerful, yes, but faith without works is dead. Faith requires movement even when you feel uncertain, even when fear is screaming louder than courage, even when the path ahead is foggy. Think about every major moment of breakthrough in Scripture. It always involved someone taking action. Noah didn't just pray for safety from the flood. He built an ark while people mocked him. Abraham didn't just pray for a promise. He left his home and walked toward a land he had never seen. The woman with the issue of blood didn't just sit at home and wish for healing. She pushed through a crowd to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. Faith always requires a step. It is not enough to believe in your heart if your feet never move. But here's why most people don't move. Action feels risky. We're afraid of failure, of judgment, of not having enough resources or enough strength. Fear tells us it's safer to stay still, that moving without guarantees is reckless. Yet God has never called his people to live by guarantees. He calls us to live by faith, trusting that he will meet us as we move. Miracles rarely happen when we are stagnant. They show up in motion. Peter never walked on water until he stepped out of the boat. The Red Sea never parted until Moses lifted his staff. The walls of Jericho never fell until the people marched around them. The breakthrough came after the step of faith, not before. Taking action doesn't mean you'll have it all figured out. Most of the time, God gives you just enough light for the next step, not the entire journey, and that's intentional. If you saw the entire road ahead, you might run from it out of fear or try to take shortcuts. Faith in action is about trusting God step by step, knowing that he already sees the full picture. It's like walking at night with a lantern. You can only see a few feet in front of you, but that's enough to keep going. The more steps you take, the more the path is revealed. Many people pray for opportunities but miss them because they're not prepared to act when the door opens. They ask for healing but never take steps toward wholeness. They ask for provision but never plant seeds. Faith doesn't just pray for rain, it digs trenches to catch it. If you truly believe God is going to move, your actions should reflect that belief. Acting in faith is like building the ark before it rains. It may look foolish to others, but it positions you for the promise. Negative feelings are one of the biggest barriers to faith in action. Fear tells you to wait until you're confident. Shame tells you to wait until you're worthy. Doubt tells you to wait until you have proof. But faith says move now, even when you're scared, even when you feel unworthy, even when there's no evidence yet. Faith says, I may not feel ready, but if God called me, I am ready. It's not the absence of fear that makes faith powerful. It's moving despite fear that brings transformation. When you take a step in faith, something shifts inside you. You begin to realize that you're not as weak as you thought. Each action builds courage, builds resilience, builds confidence in what God can do through you. It's like strengthening a muscle. Every act of faith makes you stronger. And as you take those steps, you start to see God show up in ways you never imagined. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. People come into your life who are positioned to help you. Resources appear where there seemed to be none. It's not magic, it's the manifestation of faith in motion. But acting in faith doesn't mean the road will be easy. You will face setbacks, you will encounter obstacles, you might even fail a few times. That's why so many people stay stuck. They want certainty of success before they try, but real faith accepts that mistakes are part of the journey. Every failure teaches you something, every setback strengthens your faith. You cannot grow into the person God destined you to be if you refuse to move out of fear of falling. The same God who called you is able to lift you every time you stumble. Taking action in faith also requires obedience. Sometimes God will ask you to do something that doesn't make sense to your logic. He might tell you to let go of something you've been holding on to for security. He might ask you to speak when you want to stay silent, or stay silent when you want to speak. Faith trusts His voice above your feelings. Obedience may not be easy, but it unlocks blessings that disobedience can never access. Your next level is often tied to a simple act of obedience that requires faith to execute. When you act in faith, you also inspire others. People watch how you live more than they listen to what you say. When they see you stepping out boldly despite fear, it stirs something in them. Your courage becomes contagious. Your movement gives them permission to believe that they too can rise, they too can move, they too can trust God beyond their comfort zone. Faith is not just personal, it's generational. One act of obedience can ripple through families, communities, and even nations. Faith in action also shifts the atmosphere of your mind. Negative feelings thrive in stillness because inaction allows fear and doubt to echo unchecked. When you move, those echoes lose power. Action gives your faith a louder voice than your fear. It gives you evidence to silence the inner critic. Every time you step out and see God come through, it builds a library of testimonies in your spirit that you can return to when doubt tries to creep in again. And here's the truth, the more you act in faith, the less you rely on feelings to guide you. You stop waiting for the perfect emotional state to begin because you've learned that feelings follow faith, not the other way around. You start to understand that courage is a choice, confidence is built through doing, and transformation is unlocked by taking steps long before you feel ready. There is a version of you that already exists in the mind of God. A version that is whole, strong, courageous, and fully walking in purpose. Before you ever took your first breath, God saw that version of you. He didn't just see your struggles, He saw your victory. He didn't just see your pain, He saw your healing. He didn't just see your failures, He saw every moment you would rise again. The challenge is that while God sees you as complete, we often live as the lesser version of ourselves that our fears and insecurities have convinced us to be. Most of us live trapped in identities shaped by our past experiences or current struggles. We define ourselves by what happened to us, by the betrayal, the divorce, the loss, the mistakes. We wear those experiences like name tags, introducing ourselves to the world not as who God says we are, but as who life tried to make us believe we are. And because of that, we show up in rooms timid when we should be bold, silent when we should speak, hidden when we should be leading. But just because you've been through brokenness doesn't mean broken is who you are. Living as the person God already sees requires a shift in identity. It means refusing to let pain, failure, or other people's opinions tell you who you are. It means waking up every day and making a conscious choice to see yourself the way heaven sees you. When God looks at you, He doesn't see the labels you've been carrying. He sees a masterpiece. He sees someone equipped with divine gifts, capable of doing extraordinary things. He sees a child of power and authority, created in his image to impact the world. The problem is that we've been conditioned to shrink, we've learned to downplay our gifts to make others comfortable, we've internalized rejection until it feels like truth, we've allowed fear to dictate how far we'll go. But God did not call you to live small. Everything about you was designed with intention. The way you think, the passions in your heart, even the struggles you've overcome, they all serve a purpose. To live as the person God already sees, you have to unlearn the habit of diminishing yourself and start embracing the fullness of who you were created to be. That shift begins with belief. You cannot become who God sees if you refuse to believe it's possible. Faith is not just believing in God, it's also believing what God says about you. If He calls you chosen, you must believe you are chosen even when others reject you. If He calls you strong, you must believe you are strong even when you feel weak. If He says you are forgiven, you must stop walking around in shame. Your identity cannot be anchored in your feelings because feelings change. It must be anchored in His Word, which never changes. Living as that version of yourself also requires vision. You need to take time to see what God sees. Close your eyes and imagine yourself free from every negative feeling, free from fear, walking boldly in your purpose. Imagine yourself leading, thriving, loving fully, and making an impact. That image is not wishful thinking. It's a glimpse of the truth God has already spoken over your life. When you can see it internally, you can start aligning your actions with that vision externally. But stepping into that higher version of yourself is not comfortable. It will stretch you. It will require you to let go of familiar patterns that no longer serve you. It might mean leaving environments or relationships that keep you tied to your old identity. It will definitely mean facing insecurities head on instead of running from them. Transformation is rarely convenient, but it is always worth it. You cannot fully become who God sees while clinging to the safety of who you've always been. Living as the person God already sees also demands boldness. You can't tiptoe into purpose. You have to walk in it unapologetically. That doesn't mean arrogance. It means confidence rooted in knowing who you belong to. When you know that the Creator of the universe has placed His hand on your life, you stop needing validation from people who don't understand your calling. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold you. You walk tall because you recognize you're carrying divine assignment within you. And as you start living from that identity, everything begins to change. The way you speak to yourself changes. You replace self-criticism with words of life. The way you handle obstacles changes. You stop crumbling under pressure and start seeing challenges as stepping stones. The way you show up in relationships changes. You stop settling for less than you deserve because you know your worth. Opportunities that once intimidated you now feel like invitations because you understand that you're equipped to handle them. This doesn't mean the journey will be perfect. There will still be moments of doubt and setbacks along the way. But when you've anchored yourself in who God says you are, you stop letting those moments define you. A temporary failure doesn't change the eternal truth of your identity. You may stumble, but you no longer stay down because you know a child of God doesn't live in defeat. Every time you fall, you rise quicker because you've learned that your mistakes don't cancel your calling. It's important to understand that the world around you will not always recognize the higher version of yourself immediately. Some people have only known the old you, the one who was insecure, who settled for less, who stayed quiet when she should have spoken up. When you begin to live boldly as God sees you, it might shock them. They might doubt you, question you, even try to pull you back into who you used to be. But you cannot let their limited vision define your limitless potential. Living as the person God sees means choosing His approval over theirs every single time. You also have to understand that living from this place is not just about you. It's about the assignment on your life. God didn't create you to simply exist. He created you to influence, to heal, to lead, to inspire. When you live small, you don't just rob yourself. You rob the people who are waiting for what you carry. Someone's breakthrough, someone's healing, someone's hope is tied to you stepping fully into who you are created to be. Your transformation is not selfish, it's necessary for the kingdom. As you walk in this new identity, you begin to experience freedom. Freedom from fear because you realize you've been given authority over it. Freedom from shame because you know you're already forgiven. Freedom from comparison because you understand you're uniquely designed and don't need to measure up to anyone else. Freedom from doubt because you've seen God move through you in ways you once thought impossible. This freedom is not fragile. It's unshakable because it's rooted in something eternal. And with every step you take as this version of yourself, you begin to reflect God's glory more and more. People will look at you and see transformation they can't explain. They'll see someone who came out of brokenness shining with confidence, someone who walked through storms still standing strong. And when they ask how, you'll point them back to the one who always saw it in you. Because the truth is, you were never becoming someone new. You were simply peeling away the layers of fear, doubt, and pain to reveal who you've been all along in the heart of God.